Hello, and welcome to the Heroku Integration pilot. This video is intended to give developers a demonstration of the features included in the pilot. If you would like to join the pilot, see the links in the description of this video below. So, what is the Heroku Integration pilot? Well, it helps you supercharge your Salesforce experiences with Heroku code. Now, of course, Heroku code can be Java, Node, Python, Ruby, and even .NET these days. And what happens next is you're able to then use the new Heroku Integration add-on to create new ways to connect not only to Salesforce APIs, but bring Heroku applications into the Salesforce environment, such as Agentforce, Flow, and Apex. So let's take a look at these CLI commands and the overall experience of what you can achieve in a demo. So, of course, we've got some Salesforce data here. And this is our account. So we'll be seeing this list of accounts crop up throughout the demo. So I thought it'd be good to ground us on this data that we're pretty much all familiar with within a Salesforce environment. The next thing we're going to use is Code Builder. Code Builder allows us to develop in the cloud in our browser. So this runs Visual Studio Code right here in the browser. I've created 3 applications that we'll be using for the demonstrations. This first project is a bare bones Node.js application using this Heroku integration. And I've configured my app.js JSON file here because I want to use an exciting new pilot that's available as well. And you can check out how to join that pilot in the description of this video. That pilot is the Visual Studio extension for Heroku. So using this extension, among many features, I can deploy my Heroku application. So now that I've configured my app.json, it knows the name of my application and a few details such as what add-ons to install. So let's go ahead and kick this off and allow it to start doing a deployment while we take a tour of some of the code that we're going to be using in this part of the demo. So I thought I'd start things off with a very simple way in which we can demonstrate just how easy it is to connect to Salesforce APIs from your Heroku applications. And of course on the screen here is some Node.js code. And after I've run a CLI command that will be running momentarily that connects this application to your org, it is but 3 lines of code to be able to retrieve those accounts. And of course, this is the Salesforce API, so I could also update information and I could also invoke other things in the Salesforce environment using that API. So using the Salesforce SDK that comes with the Heroku integration, it's super easy to use the Salesforce APIs. We've provided all of the helper functions to get you started as quickly as possible. So Heroku is wrapping up the deployment of this application, as we can see on screen here, and momentarily we'll see the left-hand side refresh with information about the Heroku application and its deployment. So it's finished compressing the application now, and it's now launching the application. So we're going to go to the terminal and take a look at what it's actually deployed and get some confirmation of that. So we see here on the left-hand side the name of the application. It's actually running right now. We've also got our integration add-on installed. So let's just confirm that with Heroku add-on CLI command, and yep, sure enough, there it is. The Heroku integration has been applied to my application. We also get some environment variables that are available with it, but you really don't need to pay attention to those if you're using the Salesforce SDK. And the next thing we need to do is connect to Salesforce org to this Heroku application. So that's as simple as completing a browser-based logon experience. And for that, we're going to need a password and just click log on. And that's it. That's connected my Salesforce environment to this application. And we get confirmation of that at the CLI, that connection's now been formed. And we'll also be able to use another CLI just to confirm all of our connections. And I'm using connections plural here because, yes, you can connect multiple Salesforce environments and Data Cloud environments to one application, which opens all sorts of possibilities in terms of managing multi-org scenarios in your business. So let's go and configure this application a bit further, because of those connections, I wanted to use a specific one called my.org. So I've created my own environment variable for that. We're going to go ahead and run this locally just to get a really quick feel for what's possible here. Now that I've populated my environment variables, let's go ahead and run that application. So yep, sure enough, as we expected it to do, we see output to the console of all of those accounts that I showed you earlier. are now visible. So fantastic, very basic example of how you can use one CLI command and minimal lines of code to get connected and up and running from a Heroku application connected into Salesforce. So let's move through into showing the web version of this particular demo. So once again, this is using the SDK, and it's going to output the list of accounts on a web page. So this application has now been deployed. So if we click the open button, sure enough, hello from Heroku Integration appears, and there are all our accounts per the Node.js code that we're seeing on screen here. So fantastic, two really simple ways to connect Salesforce data into your Heroku applications. But what if you wanted to do it the other way around? In this particular demo, we want to basically be able to call a Heroku app from within Salesforce. Maybe it's from Agentforce or Flow or Apex. So how do we go about doing that? Well, the first thing is we've got available, again, the Salesforce SDK, so we find it very easy to query information. So this process accounts operation is really intended just as a basic idea of what you could do here. So you might have, for example, an ability to retrieve a set of information from an org, do a lot of computational heavy operations on that, and return a particular answer. Today's example is kept deliberately short and concise for this demonstration. And part of this process of helping Salesforce understand about your Heroku app is defining something called an Open API schema. And you don't need to be an expert in this. There are many frameworks that will generate that for you. So we have gone ahead and connected the Salesforce org to this environment. So we can go ahead and confirm, again, that the add-on's been installed. We can also confirm that our configuration is set up. That's all connected. And we can also see that we've also got a connection that's already done. But the one thing we haven't done, which is new to this part of the demo, is actually import this Heroku application into the Salesforce environment. So we're going to go ahead and do that with the import command. So that's taking a connection the other way this time. It's going to inject the Heroku application automatically into the Salesforce environment for us. And we'll see what that looks like momentarily in the Salesforce environment once that's finished doing the import. By the way, we also needed to install a build pack to make this happen, and we actually call that the Heroku Service Mesh build pack. And that stands in front of your application and helps manage all the authentication coming in from Salesforce so that the SDK does its thing. So let's take a look at what Heroku looks like under Salesforce. And many of you might have already noticed the About Heroku menu option under Setup has been here for a few releases. But what's new, part of the pilot, is this Heroku Apps. So as expected, we see our account processor application that we just imported. And we can also view the details of that. And sure enough, we see our process accounts along with some of the text and description that was in the code to help admins identify it. So what can we do at this stage? Well, pretty much anything, because this is now imported automatically into your Salesforce environment. So let's start with Apex. So using this process, we already have a nice client stub for our Apex code. So our Apex developer doesn't need to think about authentication and JSON and HTTP callouts. We just use the service that's been automatically created for us called account processor. We call the process accounts method on that and then do something interesting with the response. In this case, we're just outputting it to the debug log. So now that that's finished, we'll just take a look at that debug log, and yep, sure enough, we can see the accounts have been processed. So next, let's show this same capability, but from Flow, so no code environment. So before I do that, I'm going to go back to our Visual Studio Code environment. I'm going to start logging session, and this is another feature of the VS Code extension for Heroku. We can easily see the logged output, and then remember, this is from the deployed version of the application, not running locally. So let's go to Flow, and I've already imported this action, and it's already available in the Flow canvas. I just dragged and dropped it on here, and you can see the process accounts along with the description that we gave. Keep in mind all the descriptions that you use when defining your Heroku applications really pay dividends once you start seeing it appear in the Salesforce environment. Makes it super easy for people to understand. So let's go ahead and run that. And as before, we see that it returned the accounts that it processed. But if we go back to the Visual Studio environment, sure enough, we can see all of our debug output. So we can see that the processing occurred on this org. We can see that the number of accounts or processes. This is all relevant, of course, to the log output that we told it to output. So fantastic example of how you can use a Heroku application from Apex and from Flow super easy with just a few CLI commands and point and click tools that you come to expect and love within Salesforce. Heroku is also able to be used from Agentforce. So let's take a look at a scenario that involves what I've just shown you, but with Agentforce. Some of you may have heard of Coral Cloud, powered by the Salesforce platform and technologies, and those guests can also book experiences. And when they do that at the end of their vacation, they might want a collage, a nice collection of the images in which the experiences that they participated in, and remind them of that event, along with a custom message perhaps over that collage to really capture and personalize it for them. So we might find ourselves with an agent having that type of request. And Heroku is perfect for generating these collages because it has the compute power and the languages and the libraries in order to create dynamic content, whether that's in this case is an image or a video or other types of content and media that will really help set these experiences alight for consumers. So in this particular case, we've used Java, and this is a Java API, and it has a lot of declaration of text that describes what it does. And again, the theme here is this information pays dividends once you get into the Salesforce environment, because it helps admins really understand what your code's doing and what it needs. And more to point, it helps Agentforce understand what your code is doing. So this code is simply using the SDK once again to request some information from the org, in this case about the user's experiences, and it's also using some Java code to lay out that image, do some image manipulation, put that customization and custom information on top of that image, and then finally return it to the user. So let's take a look at what that looks like in Agentforce. We've already done that import operation. We've already connected this org, and now we're in Agentforce. And you can see here Agentforce now understands the action that we've deployed, and the Heroku applications inputs, which are the contact ID. It also requires a quote from the guest, and it also returns a URL of the generated image. And there's also some instructions here as well that tell it how to behave when the request comes in. So let's take a look at that in Agent Builder, so we can see how Agent Builder chooses to run that particular action and processes that request from the user. So we are going to ask for a collage of our experience, and Agentforce is going away, parsing all of the different actions that it has available to it, including our Heroku action, and it will give us next information about what it needs during its processing. And in this case, we know that it needs to know who we are and also what we enjoyed most about our stay. So we'll go ahead and say, hey, my name is Rose and I loved coding on the beach. So it's now analyzing that particular prompt from the user. And you can see here in the middle, because we're in the Agent Builder, it's very useful for developers to see how it chooses which actions to run and some of the inputs and outputs that it's passing. Obviously, the end users only see the thing on the right. So it's now finished, and we can now click the link that it generated, and whoa, there we go. A nice Heroku-generated custom image. I love coding on the beach for the guest to take away and use. So that's some ways in which you can use the Heroku integration. So if you'd like more information about that, in the description of this video, a step-by-step guide on how to create Agentforce Custom Actions with Heroku. So thank you for watching, and please give us your feedback about the Heroku integration pilot. It's always valuable, and have a good day.